Hey everyone, welcome to the BSFT Show. Now, in restarting the podcast, I could be looking at the camera saying this, but I'm going to look at my guests as I say this. So restarting the podcast, I wanted to split it into two types of segments. One is a sprint, which is literally me giving off, similar to the mood prep podcast I did so many of, which I believe was when we first got in touch. And then the second being what I would refer to as a session. And so a session, if you can imagine sprints and sessions, a sessions is a chance to sit down with someone, fortunate enough that I get to sit down with you in person today, as opposed to how we've chatted every other time through our relationship, which would be online, through video, don't make it weird. And so the key thing there is being able to make sure that we can actually use this session to pull apart some key principles, some key takeaways on certain subjects. And I'm really looking forward to getting a number of people on. And since that, Lindsay, you came over from Minneapolis to Australia.
Just for this podcast.
Yes. We're sitting in Coaldale. Is that how you pronounce it?
Coaldale.
Yeah, Coaldale in Wollongong.
Yeah.
After a week in immersion. So, look, one of the key things... I'm not super interested in being like, so tell us more about you. I don't know why I got an American accent. I'm sorry. That was terrible.
It's always from California.
Well, I can't really do. Everything else sounds a little bit too redneck, which I probably can do well. But look, we got in touch many years ago. For you now, what is it, so everyone can be on the same page, what is it that you do day to day? And then we'll get into how you got to Australia and what we're doing now.
Yeah, so back in the States, I'm in Minnesota, for those listening, not California. On a day-to-day basis, I coach classes, strength-based classes. I have one-on-one strength training clients, and then I also have nutrition coaching that I do in person and virtually. So that's my day-to-day as far as working in the industry. And then just to kind of hit on what you said with mood prep, that is how I discovered you and what you're about. And 2018, I think it was, I had reached out to you and said, hey, I like what you're about. Like, I'm always feverishly writing down notes when I listen to these podcasts, and I would like to work with you. So we made that work, 17 hours in the future for you.
Yeah.
And
well, that was the main thing. I was like, you got to bet on these lotto numbers. Like,
yeah. Then I could have come to Australia all the time if that was the case. Yeah. So however many, 7-8 years later, here we are, and I had an opportunity to fly over and participate in basically everything that you're about very intensely for those couple of days of the immersion, which was wonderful. Yeah,
a little bit sort of, there's a word for it, but poetic in some degree, because you had a podcast, Two Dumbbell Blondes, and invited me on last year, and which was a great chat. I really enjoyed it. And off the back of that, I think I might have mentioned about, hey, why don't you come over for an immersion? And I think one of your listeners sent you some flights. Mm-hmm. Have you spoken to that listener again?
Yeah, so it was actually a listener, and it was a current client at that time, a nutrition client, and she just sent me an email about a deal that Delta had with Miles, and she's like, hey, I listened to the podcast, you might want to look into this, see if you have it. And then I had messaged you, and I said, hey, I have them. Like, are you going to be doing an immersion anytime soon? And I can time it so that I can participate in one of those.
So what's actually quite funny was that I hadn't booked anything. And you were like, all right, these are the dates. And I'm like, great, I've got something booked.
Oh, no, now I know that.
So jump on and book Kangaroo Valley. Because, we stay in the same place. We want to look around over the coming year or two, but stay in the same place, which is a beautiful location. Mm-hmm. But at that point, it was a mixture of like, if Lindsay's in, I'm like, I got to book it for those dates. I'm like,
then you're texting all your friends. You're like, who wants to come?
Yeah, well, I got just like, guys, you can't. I mean, I've only got one ticket. No.
Yeah.
We had an amazing crew at this last immersion, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. So, I have a couple of quick questions around the immersion. I mean, obviously, was it worth it? All that sort of stuff. Flying all the way over from America, but then really it's just about getting into today's topic. And I love being able to get people on, and we'll get to it soon, but have this idea of like, if you had only one more like podcast, one more message, and make it industry based, I guess, to some degree, or relevant for a person's body of work. But if you only had one more message, what would that be? Which is, I think it's beautiful because it oversimplifies a message, but it allows the person to have depth to it. So it gives this sort of mixture of both, I guess an overarching message while still being able to give depth and practicality to it. So we'll get to that for sure. But for you, all the way from Minneapolis, staying some nights in Manly, and then getting picked up from like Sydney Airport, like finding your way to Kangaroo Valley, which had no kangaroos.
No, there was one that on the side of the road.
Yeah, so technically
Sorry.
no longer a kangaroo.
It's just a spirit now.
Yeah. So I actually think the place we stayed at, Yeola, Y-E-O-L-A, is meant to be like, it associates or translates rather to like something about healing, I believe. I believe it's an Aboriginal word, from what I got told. But yeah, how was your experience of the weekend? If you were to bring it into a sentence, what would it be?
I really didn't know what to expect going into it. And I think we've had conversations around, in our industry especially, the idea of retreats. And it's like, oh, we wake up, we do yoga flow, you kind of navigate your day how you want. I think the use of the word immersion is perfect because you are immersed. You're kind of off the grid, which in today's world, I mean, we're connected to technology right now. You always have your phone on you. You heard some Southern there. Yep, you have the phone on you. So there's that aspect of kind of the outside world calming down, quieting down for a little bit, and truly immersing yourself not only in the content that is being presented and creating this space of us to take the time to think through what that content is and how we can apply it in quote unquote life outside of Kangaroo Valley, and the connections too. I think I had mentioned to you, there are some things that you do throughout the immersion that it brings people together just naturally through the action of it. But like the family meals, the family style meals, like I think a lot of us, and I say a lot of us, I know I'm on the go and eating on the go. And when's the last time I prepped food with people, ate it together, cleaned up together? Like there's just something beautiful about that connection piece. And then also those same individuals holding space for everybody else there to have these, aha moments or even tough times. Like there's definitely, you go through all the emotions when you're there, and we learn like emotions aren't something you have to tie yourself to, but just being aware of, that came up for me, and why did that come up for me, and what can I do with that? So it's just allowing you to kind of pump the brakes and do some deep work, and for lack of better terminology, it's deep work. Yeah,
I love that. And it is deep work because it's the depth of you is already there. It's just whether or not someone's willing to see it and in what category. And it's not about people should be doing this or they should be doing that. It's kind of, you meet the weekend where you're at. And the weekends are designed simply to hold up mirrors. And I mean that in the sense of like, is the way that here's some frameworks for you. Is it useful for you? Is the way that you're currently responding or thinking or breathing or moving, is it currently working for you? And if not, what's the opportunity for change for you, as opposed to going, well, this is how people should be doing this and what they should be doing that. It's literally just allowing people to go, and that's why you get so many individuals from different backgrounds, even if there is similarities coming into a space like that. And it's not a matter of this is what you should do. It's more so, here are these frameworks. They're existing anyway. You're already breathing, you're already moving, you're already eating, you're already thinking. And so the question is, if you've come this far, maybe you do want to live different. And that was a big thing of like, look, my life's good. You even said it, it's like, so it's not like it's like I'm here because I need to really fix anything. It's a matter of going, well, what's the gap between good to great? And what could possibly be getting in the way of you really leaning into what is possible? And it's not to be told that, it's to be able to see it. So all the frameworks from a physiological, breath work, whatever that means, we actually go through and actually explain the power of breath as opposed to simply just delivering breath work. We have a rule called look, play, learn, right through to understanding your nervous system and how that overlaps, and then the psychology of it, in the sense of like, how do you structure your thinking, and what are your blind spots, and what are the frameworks to understand that, neither good nor bad. And so for you then, 7 years from mood prep to the Kangaroo Valley, and then like we're chatting, you had a few more days on the back end, and I'm like, look, if you're going to stay somewhere, stay just north of Wollongong. It's one of my favorite areas. Gina and I might even have some time off. And you're like, so do you guys going to book something? And we ended up booking this amazing place, four of us, because there was a little one here.
Yeah. Did she pay her part?
In many ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
In many smiles.
Yeah, in many ways. You're right, we didn't split it four ways.
We didn't split it 4 ways.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. You're shaking your head. So, but right next to the ocean, and it's absolutely lovely. So have you had some time to do a bit of decompression?
Yeah, and I think from what you just highlighted with the immersion, when we were there, you said, we're just starting. Like, I don't think it's realistic to walk away from 2 or 3 days or even a couple days post and be like, got to figure it out, guys. Like, this is what I need to do.
The certificates are coming. I've just got to send them in the
laminated.
mail. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
I've had opportunities since then to put it into practice. And that is one thing, too, that I set out to do post is journal every day of what things come up for me where I stop and I become aware. And what do I do with that awareness? And so journaling about it brings it to the forefront and allows you to do something with it, too. So that's... I mean, I'm not back to quote unquote reality yet, and because that's going to be a few thousand miles away still, a couple days away. But I'm looking forward to that because I think that's where it really, like, the work that we did there starts to come to life more and more as you practice it.
I'm really looking forward to hearing how, if and how this applies to your work over time. That's what I'm really keen to hear. And so going into your work, in that case, and like I mentioned to you before, if you had sort of one message with your body of work that you had to talk to and offer someone, one last podcast. Oh no, in today's world.
I think you said last dying breath actually, and I was like, I don't know if that'd be my last words.
I hope. Yeah, I'm not sure. Actually, let's say that I did say that.
Yeah.
Let's not go down that path. Maybe just a last opportunity.
Eat the carbs. No.
yeah. What is it? Dessert first.
Yeah.
But what would that message be?
You asked me that literally right before we started this, and I said something to along the lines of nutrition doesn't need to be restrictive, and I think that comes from a place of when I first meet people, their frustrations come from what they've done in the past. It worked, but maybe only for a short time. And they're sitting in front of me because they're still not happy with something within their nutrition that ties back to maybe their energy levels, how they show up in other aspects of their life, how they potentially look in their aesthetics. But all these things that they've tried in the past tend to be things that are restrictive. And they get that, we brought this up in the immersion, all or nothing mindset or black and white thinking, this is good, this is bad, with all of their nutrition. And that's not sustainable. So I guess my message would be nutrition doesn't have to be any of those things. You can get to this place where it feels empowering. You have confidence going into whatever situation there may be when it comes to food. And it's honestly like when you do the work, kind of even to the immersion, when you do the work and you practice it, it becomes easier. Because I think that's the other thing too. I'll take on clients and they're like, so how long is this going to take? I'm like, however long you think it's going to take, add time to that. Because this isn't something that it's like a hard start and stop date, because that's what you've done in the past, right? 30-day challenges, certain diets that are only this many days, or detoxes. It has a hard start and stop. And ideally, you're eating until you die. So we need to find an approach that navigates all those ups and downs and everything in between.
Yeah. I mean, pretty good, but starting to predict the day that someone dies is pretty bad. How long will this take? It's like, well, judging by
until you die.
Yeah. So look, in that case, what would you suggest is the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to integrating a healthy approach to nutrition into the day-to-day life?
I think it goes back to that all or nothing in black and white. And what I mean by that more specifically with nutrition is, if I can't stick to the plan, whatever that plan is, let's say it's keto and you're eating only so many carbs, or let's say it's Whole30 and you can't have anything that has more than, 4 ingredients, whatever that may be, as soon as you don't do that, you're off. And then it triggers this snowball effect of, well, because I messed up there, I might as well do this, and this, and I'll restart on Monday. It's like, what? And it goes back to that resilience piece too of, you've probably heard the quote, if you get a flat tire, do you pull over and flatten the other 3, or do you fix that one and move on? So having resilience through the practice of figuring out nutrition. So I would say the all or nothing. And then black and white. We label food as good and bad. And that even ties into the all or nothing. Oh, a cookie's bad. The cookie's not bad. The cookie's a cookie. You are labeling it as something bad, and then you react a certain way because you had a bad food that you labeled as bad. So I would say those two are probably the most common things that start to shift for people when they start to do nutrition coaching. With all or nothing as well, I've said this before on one of our podcasts, is you're kind of giving yourself an out with that. You're basically saying, if I can't be all in, then here's my excuse out. So it's not the all or nothing. It's typically all or something. Or how can you still show up even if the situation isn't quote unquote perfect? Because that's what they mean by all. They mean like the circumstances are lined up. They have the food prepared. They have the good menu to order off of. You know, that doesn't take into account when you're short on time, when you're traveling, when you have holidays. What do you do then? What do you do when the situations aren't stacked up for you to be as perfect or successful as you think you might need to be in order to see results? Because a lot of times people don't need to be as on or all in as they think they need to be.
So do you think that mindset, that attitude can still seep into when somebody has a healthy nutrition framework to follow, and that still shows up and sabotages it? Or is there something else at play there?
To repeat the question so I understand what you're saying, you were saying...
Just the examples you gave were like keto and Whole30. So they were very like sort of...
There's
almost
rules
like,
around them.
Well, yeah, yes. And there's also... They can sometimes be all or nothing approach, like actual diets to some degree. Because if you're not doing it, then you're off the diet anyway, right? If you eat too many carbs with keto, then you're already not doing it. So with a more flexible approach and framework to diet, is there like diets that themselves can be all or nothing, and then there's the actual individual that has an all or nothing approach as well?
I would say both. And to that point, even with the word diet, like diet is just how you eat. And we as a society, as a culture, have labeled diet as like rules and rigidity around what you're doing versus like, no, this is just how I eat. This is my diet. But people, when they hear diet, they think, oh, what are you not having? Or like, what are the confines within how you're eating? I find that individuals, if they say I'm all or nothing, it typically isn't just nutrition that they're with that with, but that's a really hard one for them. So I think when they start to find ways that are more sustainable, it's a lot of gray. And we talked about that too with the black and white, like a lot of gray, a lot of like nuances. The situations can change. The goal within food can change. That's another thing I work with people on. Like, yeah, we talk mostly in the form of food as fuel because I'm working with a lot of people that are already working out. They want to take it to that next level, or they're aware of, you know, certain numbers. So when we talk, it is a lot about fuel, but I also share it's societal, it's cultural. Like, you have to understand that when you go into a different situation, the goal with that food might change too. And being okay with that. Like, if you're at a birthday party and yes, we're working together and you're trying to get more protein, or you're trying to have, you know, less sugar, or whatever that may be for that individual, and there's your son's birthday or your grandma's birthday, and you're like, I'm not going to have that cake, but you really want that cake? Like, that's, in the grand scheme of all the things and all the meals that you've ate, even if in this week, that's not going to make or break you. And that goes back to that, well, if I have that cake, then I messed up and I did something wrong, or moving forward, I might as well, you know, just start over when the next opportunity comes. And it's like, no, you had it. You hopefully enjoyed it in that moment. You were part of an experience with other people that you love and care about. And then you got right back to what you know. You didn't have to wait for the next day or the next fresh start. It's just like, no, I had that cake. It was cake for a birthday. And now I'm back to my normal dinner.
Or gelato.
Or gelato. We had some last night and it was delicious. I have a lot of gelato when I travel.
Yeah, gelato.
Yeah.
That's
a lot.
So one of the key things is, especially from our worldview and in the sense of like BossFit and looking at development, we see all or nothing as a stage. It is an actual necessary stage for every human being to work through. It's another term for all or nothing is, of course, like black and white thinking and so forth. But it's another term for it's actually rules and roles. And so it's a necessary. So sometimes all or nothing gets a bad rap, which is an all or nothing approach to that stage, which is quite interesting. Whereas really we see it as I'm actually learning the rules and roles. And it's when we get stuck in that stage as, let's say, as an adult, as we mature, that can sometimes block a further development, especially when our lives get more nuanced than go to school, leave school, grab whatever's in the kitchen from, teenage sort of years, which is really where a lot of those rules and roles are coming online. It's really interesting. I tell this story, and I'd love to hear your thought on this. And I tell this story around, let's say there's a mum and she's doing the shopping for her family, right? Let's say family of 5. And for years, she's just gone to the shopping mall, to Kohl's, right?
Kohl's,
yeah. Whatever Kohl's is in America. It is not Whole Foods. And so, but Kohl's or whatever supermarket. And she's going down and she's going to reach for some margarine, right? And she pauses for a moment. And instead of the margarine she reaches for the 99% fat-free margarine. Now, I have a lens on this. What are your thoughts on this? On that, if you had a snapshot of that right there.
It's interesting because I feel like, especially if you are on social media, it's become a lot of demonizing certain things and look over here instead. And I think if we get caught up in that, the stress of it all is worse than just eating what you want to eat or eating what works well for you and your family.
Yeah.
I mean, I even go to the extent of maybe someone hears you need to buy all organic, right? And I'm a fan of however you can eat it. Meaning if financially you can't afford organic, or maybe it's not available in the store, I would much rather you eat the fruit or eat the vegetable, even if it's not organic, versus being like, oh, shoot, I'm just not going to have it then.
Yeah.
I can't get organic.
Yeah. The other interesting thing is that sometimes we're looking at the outcome, right? Which is butter better than margarine? I would suggest butter is better than margarine. Now, in that story, what can be so missed so often is that this is likely and could very well be the first time that this lady has put this idea that maybe there's a better option. And so sometimes that person then later on jumps on social media and is like, never eat margarine, you're poisoning your family. She's like, fuck, I can't do anything right. Whereas what she did was show a significant shift from like possibility, right? And so what came online for her wasn't like, I need to lose fat. It might have been, but wasn't necessarily that. What came online for her was probably, what's a better option for the health of my family? And so even though it was an imperfect step, the actual shift is fundamental, and that's a shift of growth. And so often I think these things, and you're right with all these other sort of factors of like, what can you afford for your family? Like, what is the best step based on the worldview that you currently have? And people develop through stages. We don't develop through ages. Like, it's a key difference between 10 years experience and 1 year experience 10 times is the difference of someone getting through to, I don't know what it's called, sophomore or something, but year 10 or getting really, really good at kindergarten, right? Like, it's just like, I am nailing kindergarten. I'm like, yeah, you're 22. You like,
I'd hope
should
so.
Be, yeah. So it's this like you should still be stumbling and fumbling forward. You don't go to year 10 or equivalent going, I know what to do in year 10. And so I think it's this sort of freeing permission that people also have to give themselves to be able to like get it wrong as you move forward, because it's not actually wrong, it's directionally correct. Which I think is really important.
And I think to that point too, with nutrition, there can definitely be, I would say, you're missing the forest for the trees, or you're stepping over, dollars for pennies. We tend to hone in on like very specific things, and maybe it is something like seed oils, or it is processed foods, or whatever it is. And there are foundational things that will move the needle much more for you, and probably also more sustainably, than honing on any one detail like that. And when I do nutrition coaching, it's not just what are your macros. Yes, we talk about those, but we're talking about how's your sleep, how's your stress management, how are your bowel movements. Like, there's those things that it kind of can be weird to talk about, but we're looking at you as a complete human. It's not just how many grams of protein are you eating? That's a factor in it. But I think that's where people can get caught up in, again, going back to like messages they might see of, oh, well, if that's the thing, like I'll focus on that. And maybe it helps you, maybe it moves the needle. But if you're stressing about a seed oil, but you're sleeping, 5 hours a night and you're stressed out, and with those 5 children, I'm sure you have zero to little time to yourself. It's looking at those bigger rocks and trying to figure out better ways for those before we stress about, in my opinion, some of the little things. Now, everyone's different. Like, it's kind of like the analogy of eat the frog. Like, do we want to eat the frog first thing in the morning, like tackle the biggest thing first? Or maybe someone does want to focus on their water intake. Like, yeah, hydration is important. I wouldn't normally start someone if they have a weight loss or aesthetic goal saying like, well, how much water are we drinking? But some people do operate better that way. Some people do better with little wins and building that momentum versus taking on something bigger or that takes more time and attention and focus from them, like figuring out their sleep. Like, that is foundational to almost anything that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What supplements should I take?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what are you deficient in? I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe non-phone related activities before bed.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody, because there is conversations around it, and especially when you look at something like BossFit and when we start to see things through stages. And so it's easy to go like, okay, what's the best thing? It's like, no, the question is, what's the best thing for me? Mm-hmm. And so what's your advice then for someone who kind of knows what they should be doing, isn't really kind of following it all the time? Because, they will say things like life gets in the way. And maybe, which is another thing, they're not doing too bad with their food. Mm-hmm. But what's your advice to go, like, how do I go from that to going, okay, I'm confident with my approach to food without having to take a photo of it and send it to somebody and say, am I allowed to eat this? Mm-hmm. I've never had to do that. But let's say that's how some people might think of following a nutrition plan. Yeah.
I mean, kind of similar to how you're talking to the people that come to the Immersion. I think that most people I'm working with, they're aware. Like, they're not, they understand, like, what a protein is. They understand, like, how to comprise a meal. I would say when they start to look at all the factors, there's normally a couple that when they start to bring awareness to it, they're like, oh, like I wasn't looking there. I'm having a little bit of a brain fart here. I don't know, like, I think it's subjective and objective data, right? And I think a lot of times when someone comes into a situation where they're wanting to make change, they'll say things like, I eat pretty well, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, compared to what? How are you defining well? Mm-hmm. So when you start to do a little bit more objective, it can be eye-opening. Like, I always preface myself as like, I'm not here, and you do a good job with this, in my opinion. I'm not here to have the answers. I'm here to ask the right questions, but I set framework for them to honestly create their own wins, like for them to become aware of it. And then they're sharing with me what came up for them. And then we navigate through that together. And when you start to put metrics around things, like awareness to the numbers, or even quantifying some subjective things, like if someone says, I don't have a lot of energy throughout my day right now, well, how do we know that that's getting better? What are we looking for? So that's another thing I like to have people do is like, take me 6 months, 12 months out from now. How does life look different for you than it does now? Like, what are you hoping to get from this? And that's what we kind of use as a measuring stick. So it's not always just about a scale. It can be a lot of different things. And normally it's the things that they don't pay attention to, and then they start to pay attention to it. So I think it's quantifying. There are objective things like how many grams of protein are you having? How many calories total are you having? Calories is what we use in the U.S.
We use calories. Kilojoules is
kilojoules.
Yeah, we don't use kilojoules. Kilojoules in, kilojoules out, doesn't it?
Yeah, calories in, calories out. So I think by starting to create awareness, by taking time to track those things, how many hours of sleep are you getting? How are we quantifying the quality of it?
Right. So just basically bringing awareness to what you're not got awareness on.
Because it's easy for me to sit here and say, I'm good here, here, and here. But going back to, there's a reason you're in front of me. There's something missing, and my job is to kind of be an investigator and to help you side by side, figure out what is that thing we're missing. And 9 times out of 10, it's not a overhaul of their life. It's not a huge life change. It's normally little tweaks that need to be done consistently. Like it's the magnitude over time of those things being executed.
So what would be like the name three main things that people should track and have awareness? If they were to have like a dashboard for nutrition, what would that be?
From a food standpoint, I think eating enough consistently.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is people tend to say, I'm good all day, and then at night, all bets are off. Or I'm good all week, and then the weekend hits, and oh boy.
It's interesting, right? Because even in like inherent in the word "I'm good" is presupposing that it's better than default.
Yeah.
So at some point, I'm going to go back to default, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say eating enough consistently, daily movement. So I think people tend to overestimate how important workouts are and underestimate daily movement outside of that workout. And then, honestly, the last one, I would say comes more from like, so when I work with people, they can journal. They basically reflect on their day, and every week they have what went well, what am I proud of, what didn't go well, how would I change what didn't go well, in my opinion, and then what help or support do I need. So I think that weekly recap is where more the mindset stuff comes.
Okay.
So it's not as objective with that, but you can see it because you can look back at the notes.
Yeah.
You can see like, oh, they had an aha there.
Okay.
Oh, that changed.
So if I was to listen to this podcast, decide to go, cool, I'm going to create my own little, nutrition coach low dashboard.
Yeah.
And on that dashboard, I've got, am I eating consistently? Am I like, what's my movement, both intentional and what's like, let's say exercise, and then a reflection journal weekly. So when it comes to eating consistently, how would I know to measure that on my dashboard?
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm generalizing here because it's going to be slightly different for each person. I know even us spending as a family and yourself here the last few days, like I have 3 big meals now, and like that actually really works for me for a variety of different ways. And I've eaten like, I'm pretty sure I've poured protein powder into like pasta that I've bought before in the past, like all sorts. So what does eating consistently look like? How can I measure that?
Yeah. So when we think of your energy in or your calories in, keeping it really simple, if you're losing weight, you're in a deficit. If you've been about the same, you're in maintenance. And if you're gaining weight, you're in a surplus. So let's say you start to track your food. That's the best way. Like, I know there's some people that have, feelings about tracking. I would also encourage you to start tracking, not just when you're trying to lose weight, but just tracking for simply bringing awareness to what you're eating. So regardless of where you're at right now and what your goals are, starting to track. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's going to give you an idea of about how much you're taking in.
It's not the tracking that people struggle with. It's the judgment. It's the judgment of the tracking. So there's something that's I personally love, and at this stage of my life kind of live by to some degree. And it's off the back of thousands of conversations, but also when someone says to me, like, I know what to do. And I'm like, well, if you know what to do and you're not doing it, because they often follow with, I'm just not doing it. So if you know the solution to your problem and you're not doing the solution, then you don't know the solution and you don't know the problem, right? Well, other way around, you don't know the problem.
Yeah.
Because you may be solving a symptom, but you're not solving the problem behind the problem. And so a lot of the time when it comes to tracking, sometimes the actual tracking is a journal exercise in itself, because the person can help to move, okay, let me practice just observing this as if I'm reading a recipe book, as opposed to actually like writing it down or not writing it down means something about me. And so that's the personalization of it. And then that's a deeper practice to really work through. But yeah, so when we're looking at eating consistently and literally just tracking it down, it's also building the practice of building objectivity or observational filtering to the exercise as well, which is like once people can move into that, because a lot of the time when it comes to tracking, and let me know if you think otherwise, but or have other thoughts on it, the tracking itself, people start to after a little while, because it is objective, people start to lose the emotional influence that it used to have before they tracked. And a lot of the times the goal of tracking is so you don't need to track in the future.
It's a means to an end. It's, like I said, this can take different durations for different people, but when you start to track your food, it's number one, awareness. And then two, what do you do with that? I do think you're hitting on, people tend to like not put stuff in that they're proud of, right? Like, I didn't eat a whole sleeve of cookies. I'm not just going to leave that off.
But that does, is that what you called
a
it?
Whole sleeve of cookies. Yeah. But that doesn't help anyone, right? That doesn't help you. That doesn't help if I'm coaching you. Like, that you're essentially lying to yourself. You're lying to me. Like, why? That's not going to get you any closer to what you're wanting out of this process. And it goes back to, like you were saying with the judgment of it. But, shoot, why do I keep doing this?
Well, it's really
there's so
interesting.
Many thoughts going through my head.
It's spot on, right? Because it's like there's, and we've only got a few minutes left. So it's like I feel you, because it's like there's so easily you press record for 3 hours and then feel like you've covered a bit of a subject, let alone trying to do it for 40 minutes, right? So when we look at something like this, and it's just, there's so much agreement in going, the end goal is hopefully people have less pressure on themselves. Like, you can't hate yourself into healthiness, right? And beat yourself into healthiness. And so, it's the topic's really important. So when we look at something like how do I eat consistently, it's like, is it a matter of me going, I'm going to aim for 5 conscious meals today, as in, like, even if a couple of them are snacks, I'm just going to aim for 5. Is that a way you'd recommend, or like how would someone start that?
I think going back to your point of it's not a forever thing with the tracking, I like to start with that, to start to change the habits and behaviors, so eventually you don't track, and you just kind of inherently know what works well for you, what feels good for you, what fuels your body the right way, depending on what the goal is. And you always have this foundation to come back to without having to go and track. Now, myself, I tracked for years. I don't do it consistently, but I do when I'm preparing meals, just kind of check myself every once in a while. Like, how many grams of protein is that? Am I close? So it's just kind of like if you had any goal, you would set a time like quarterly or weekly or whatever that looks like, to just do a little check-in. Like, am I on the right path? But yeah, to your point, it's to get you to a stage where you don't have to pull out your phone or your journal or whatever, if you're taking pictures, journaling, at tracking in a food app. So it is a means to an end. I would say, if your question about like, what's my goal? I think you'll figure that out when you start to bring awareness to where you at now. It's so hard to say like, oh, you should do this. And that's the thing too, like what works for your sister, your neighbor, your friend, whatever, may not work for you. So it's figuring out what feels good, where do I maybe have opportunity, and what do I want to start with? Like, pick one thing and maybe focus a week or two until you give it a fair shot. I always tell people, we can't say if something did or didn't work unless we give it 2 to 3 weeks of consistency. Because if you're doing it for one day and you're like, that didn't work, it's like, well, give yourself some time. So pick one thing. Maybe it is, I'm going to have more protein at breakfast. Maybe it is, I'm going to seek more green things at dinner. And
so basically having that one simple step, and then that's the thing that you're measuring. Yeah, I love that. And then when it comes to movement, like so treat me like someone that's like, look, I've done a bit of training and stuff before, and I'm sort of within your ecosystem, and I like your stuff. I'm not ready for a variety of reasons to do any work with you yet, but I love what you said about the dashboard idea and how to follow that. And I just need a bit of clarity. Like, talk me through, how would I look to track my movement over a day?
I mean, the easiest way is through some type of pedometer. So whether it's built into your watch or you get a really inexpensive one to wear, that's a good starting point. I think it is seeking, and it sounds so silly because you've probably heard back in the day, like, take the stairs, park further away. But those things do add up. So when you're in those situations, making those choices to get more movement, I think another thing with daily movement is people forget that it can also be subconscious. Like, it can be even how we use our hands when we talk. It can be household chores. I mean, if you're that lady with 5 kids, you're probably getting quite a bit of movement in. Maybe, but that's a way to measure it, is a pedometer. Otherwise, it's being aware of, am I sitting for 20, 30 minutes at a block? Am I getting up and moving? So if you don't have a pedometer, or you don't want to track your steps, like if you're sitting at a desk job or you are just captive for some reason, every 20, 30 minutes, try to move. don't put hard and fast numbers on it. Just get in the habit of doing that and then build from there. I like book ending days too. So starting or ending with some type of movement, or if you have the opportunity over a lunchtime, and just start to habit tie, like, oh, I had lunch, now I'm going to go walk around the block, or oh, I had dinner and I'm going to go grab the dog and go around the block. So it's starting to habit tie things that are already happening in your day.
Okay. All right. So we've got this ability to like just check in. What am I like? Am I just aiming to have 5 meals a day, like just 5 conscious times of eating something? Doesn't matter what it is to begin with, or maybe I'm aiming for more protein per meal, so make sure I have a protein in each meal, and so that's what I'm checking. Then I've got some form of either actual physical objective tracker. If I don't have that, then is it a part of my reflection journal at night? Is it simply I actually use an app, mind you, called Streaks. And
a habit tracker?
Yeah, basically. And I haven't been in the habit of doing it since the immersion. But I have three tasks in there. And one's called morning pages, which is my journaling exercise. The other one is deep work, which are 30-minute slots. I have 3 that I have to do. And then the other one is daily movement. Okay. And so it streaks all my days, and like, it's the stuff that I actually want to have in the BossFit app over time. But that's a software that isn't tracking me. I'm using it to track as well. So that's something that I've used in the past of like, it's just daily movement. I'm like a conscious daily movement. And if somebody isn't in a position where they're really doing any daily movement, then that's an easy way to go. Did I do some conscious daily movement today? And you get to see over the month of the days you did and didn't. And like, this is with BossFit, we have what we refer to like building assets, is having what is the asset you want to build this month? What's the habit you want to build this month? And then how do you track that over the next 30 days? And then it gives a score actually over that. So it's the same sort of approach, which I love. Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with James Clear and Atomic Habits, but he has a quote, which I love. And it's, in order for a habit to be improved, it first has to be established. So setting hard and fast numbers right away work for some people. Some people it doesn't. Like he has a story in that book where the guy in the gym just gets in the habit of opening the front door and goes home. And then he's like, well, if I'm already here, I might as well walk. Well, if I'm already here, I might as well strength train. And so you have to build it and start somewhere. That even goes back to what I said earlier of like, what can you do even on your hard days, even on your bad days? Like, how can you still show up
just go check
for that
the mail.
Habit? Yeah.
Like literally, it's like, I'll just check the mail.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you can check your email. Yeah. A little bit different. All right. Last one. What are the 3 questions like that you would recommend? And if you really need a bonus question, you can have a 4th one, you can. But in that journal prompt at the end of the week, reflection journal, what would be the questions that you'd want in there?
The ones that I mentioned in the weekly? Yeah. So even if you're not working with me and quote unquote turning this into me, what went well? What are you proud of? Like, where did you have wins? And I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit with that, especially in nutrition.
So what was your wins?
Yeah. What were your wins? What are your opportunities? Maybe what didn't go so well? And what did you set out maybe in your app to track that you missed more than you hit? What was that, and what did it look like? What would you do different in this coming day, this coming week? How would you set yourself up for success? Or maybe that's a habit that doesn't serve you. And maybe
it might have been too big of a jump, or you actually didn't really want it. Maybe it was someone else's goal for you or something like that. You
just want to try it on, see how it went, and maybe it didn't do much for you, didn't move the needle for you. It wouldn't make a difference if you stopped, kind of thing. And then the last one is, what kind of support do you need?
Okay.
So whether it's something you need to set up yourself or external to you, a person, a system, a process. What do you need to be successful in that next venture?
I love that. So what went well? What did I miss? Right. What didn't go so well? What didn't I do? And then what was the third one again?
How would you change that?
What
would you do different?
So would I adjust? Was it like, I just had, this week I was sick. So I'm still keen on that goal. I was literally in bed 3 days. Something like that. Or it was a matter of going like, I just don't think I'm going to get to that yoga class at 5:30 a.m. every single morning like I first initially set out. So maybe I'm going to aim for 2 a week. So make those sort of adjustments. And then the next one is just a last little check-in with them and going, is there anything else that you need, like schedule-wise, planning-wise, friends-wise, support-wise, coach-wise, to be able to achieve your goal? Love that. So that's the Coach Low dashboard.
The Coach Low dashboard, weekly check-in.
Yeah. Fantastic. Lindsay, it's been lovely chatting with you. And I'll probably get you back on over the coming months as well. I plan to do this frequently. And I know that you've got a couple of things coming up, more masterclasses. And if you, look, you jump on TV, not just jump. You probably, I don't know if you
yes,
do
I jump.
Yeah, I would have to. But and present a lot of information around that sort of stuff. I love the expertise that you display there. So I'm keen to get you on more often anyway. But I do know you got some different trainings and that kind of stuff coming up as well. So keen to hear more about that in the future.
Yeah, and I'll communicate that and make sure all your listeners have the information.
Yeah, I'll make sure you stay within the little BSFT community.
Yeah.
Because it's little now.
But it'll be big.
Yeah, it'll grow to the
It'll be
size it
medium
needs
size.
to be. Yeah. I'm looking forward to really putting my heart and soul into it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks,
All
Lo.
right. Thank you.